to believe that just 10 years ago, Hyundai's N division didn't exist at all, and yet we're now standing next to the brand's first fully electrified rolling lab, which is basically a prototype on which Hyundai develops future technologies. And by this time next year, it's pretty likely we will have driven the first production fully electric Hyundai N car, which will actually be the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, even though this car next to me, the RN22E, basically looks like a Hyundai Ioniq 6N. Of course, those two cars sit on the same eGMP platform. This RN22E here is going to provide a lot of the technology that will go under the new Ioniq 5N and under the Ioniq 6N. And today we're going to drive this high performance battery electric vehicle. Under the skin, it has a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery. It has a 430 kilowatt dual motor arrangement. On the rear motor, it has a twin clutch differential. It's got a drift mode. It's got the ability to do some pretty cool stuff, but it weighs 2 tons. Hyundai's other performance vehicles with combustion engines are much lighter. So today, I'm keen to see what this vehicle is really like to drive on track, a key attribute for any Hyundai N car, despite the fact that it's fundamentally different to one of the brand's combustion vehicles. So let's jump behind the wheel of the RN22E and see exactly what it's like to drive. Okay, so driving the RN22E, the first thing you notice is the sound. It makes a lot of it. Hyundai N says this isn't necessarily the finished sound yet. There might even be the ability for people to choose their own sound or open source upload a sound, but it certainly brings a whole other element to the experience of driving an EV. And then there's the bespoke new rear motor for this car, which is completely different to the regular eGMP rear motor that's fitted to a standard Ioniq 6 or Ioniq 5. It can spin to 25,000 RPM, double inverter, and that just means this car just pulls so hard beyond 150 kilometers per hour. It feels like it's pulling as hard as Hyundai's eTCR Racer, and that's really saying something. And here at Bilsterberg, the acceleration is just addictive, but not just the launch acceleration that's typically good on EVs, but it just keeps piling on speed. The steering's good, different steering rack I would say, or different steering tune to a standard eGMP car. Chassis sits really flat, passive dampers on this car, but that's not necessarily the finished product. But the twin clutch rear diff lets you get quite a bit of attitude on the car, but it talks to you, it's friendly, which is interesting because this car has serious outputs, 430 kilowatts of power, 740 newton meters of torque. You're not wanting for power, that's for sure. You get a real sensation of speed. There's a lot to do, a lot to manage as a driver, which is exactly what you want. And we also have the ability to have artificial shifts through the paddles here on the steering wheel, which is actually altering the RPMs of the motor, which is fascinating. Kind of like a CVT in a combustion car, but if you want to, it just gives you a whole different dimension of control, and it's actually quite difficult to master. It's not just there for fun. It's quite difficult to work out the right shift points to really get the best out of the braking and acceleration from the car. So as a sort of expert mode, I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's the sound is really quite something. It's nothing like a Model 3 performance to drive. That's kind of my first takeaway from the car. There's vibration, there's sound, there's the ability to shift yourself if you want to. You don't have to do that though. The twin clutch setup at the back, it's pretty aggressively tuned in right now. That might be like an expert mode on a production Ioniq N car, but if they can sort of have an expert mode where you can really get the back end moving on track, or where it's safe to do so, that's cool. I think a friendlier mode would also be useful for the production Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6N, but you certainly get the rear end moving on this car. There's a lot to manage as a driver, and that's fun.